Hey, welcome everybody. So just a quick reminder, same rules as you heard in the earlier sessions. We're not raising hands and we're not speaking, but we definitely want to hear from you in the chat. So anything that has to do with this presentation, please use the chat button. If you have a bigger question for TCI, use the questions and answers. I am so thrilled you're here. Let's take a quick moment. A lot of you were able to share where you're from and what you teach, but put in the chat real quick, what has been the best part of your summer so far? Summer's not quite over. And if you didn't have a chance, what do you teach? It seems like we have a really good mix. So good to see. Lots of elementary, lots of coaches. I love seeing that. K-5 admin, awesome. Some middle school, that's wonderful. 3 to 5. Just bought a couch. Okay, is that not ultimate adulting when you're so excited about a couch? Travel. Laura, where have you been to? Sleeping in, right? That is a good one. Waking up late, yes. Ooh, master bath remodeling. We did that last summer. Um, Washing my hair in the sink. Luckily, we have a hot tub. Vacation to Greece and Italy. Go you. That's awesome, Alyssa. Being with my kids during day trips. Yeah, for sure. Enjoy those days. Ooh, St. Simon's Island. I have always wanted to go there. Reading for fun. That's crazy. 4 vacations. Angelina, you're doing something right. All right. Oh my gosh. Love seeing how much people have enjoyed this way too short summer. Paula, love that you are just adopting TCI social studies and that you are here today. So not gonna lie, I have done a lot of presenting over the years. I'm very comfortable in front of live groups. Doing it virtually, not my favorite thing. I can't see your faces. I can't gauge. And it was a total shot in the arm during the welcome session just to see the excitement about TCI and that all of you are giving up your very valuable, way too short summertime to be here with us. So just know that all of us at TCI, whether we are full-time employees or like myself, I have a day job and this is my side gig because I've always loved TCI. It does our hearts so much good to see you here and to know that you want to keep learning. Awesome. So many great vacations. So my name is Julie Minetta, and as you can see, I am a training specialist. TCI is starting out with a new coach program. That's actually how I got started 20 years ago. My district in Michigan adopted TCI social studies. I was teaching first grade at the time, and I became a district coach. And at that time, they needed trainers and started doing some training here and there. And here we are 20 years later. It's one of the best parts of my summer, traveling around the country, meeting people in different districts, sharing the excitement. I just love that. Most of my career has been spent K-3, but I'm a literacy specialist. I also did a stint in middle school. I always thought middle school teachers are crazy, and I was actually really happy to join their ranks, and I love middle school. I taught content literacy and interventions and used TCI even in the interventions because, as this session is about, a lot of interventions, besides learning how to decode, it's also learning how to read content literacy or how to read content and how to comprehend it. And TCI is such a beautiful vehicle for both the content and the literacy skills. And my day job now is more or less as a literacy coach. So that's a little bit about me. As I said, I would rather do this in person. So please feel free to use the chat and chime in with questions or comments. Amanda is my co-host, and she's going to keep me on track and let me know what you have to say or what you want to know more about. Okay, so what are we going to do today? We're going to start out talking about considerate text and content literacy. TCI is wonderful for both of those. We're going to talk about some of TCI's built-in components that can help both with that content literacy and helping students learn the content at the same time. And then we're going to talk about some of the toolkits that are built into the program to go above and beyond. My third session is on visual discovery, and it's kind of a complement to this. But my hope and what I found as I used TCI over the years is that the strategies and some of the components were so effective that they were useful in other content areas as well. So one of my personal goals is that you can take what we do here today and carry it into your entire day to help kids learn and enjoy school. All right, so we're going to start out with how TCI texts support content reading. And before we do that, we're going to start out talking a little bit about Scarborough's reading rope. If you are an elementary teacher, you're probably familiar with this. Our middle school friends, perhaps not so much. Scarborough's rope is a reading model that was developed in 2001 by Hollis Scarborough. And so if you visualize a rope with two distinct strands, one of those strands is word recognition. And so that includes the act of decoding, phonological awareness, hearing the sounds before you attach them to the letters, and eventually recognition of sight words. We are not talking about the word recognition strand today, but we are very much going to talk about the language comprehension strand. And in this reading model, while when we think of science of reading, we often think about the word recognition components, the fact is, in order to be a skilled reader, it takes both strands of the rope. Students have to be able to decode, but they also have to be able to comprehend. And that includes vocabulary knowledge, background knowledge, which according to research is one of the biggest things that can stand in the way of students learning and being a skilled reader. Language structures, we're really going to go into that, and literacy knowledge, as well as verbal reasoning. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to just pause here. Thoughts or questions about Scarborough's reading rope? Is this brand new to you? Does it make sense? Are you super familiar with it? Do you see already how Scarborough's rope lends itself to content literacy? Okay. I appreciate the question about verbal reasoning. Verbal reasoning is the ability to make those connections, to infer, and also to be able to discuss. Research is showing that oral literacy is a huge indicator of reading comprehension. If kids don't have that listening comprehension and the ability to discuss, then it's going to be difficult for them to read and comprehend. So that is all part of verbal reasoning. Yeah, dyslexia training for sure would go with this. So if it is new to you, I would recommend that you make a note and look it up. There's all kinds of research about it. And this particular model is definitely a driving force in what we know about best practices around literacy, both at the elementary level and later, frankly. Okay, I'm going to throw another one at you, and this one might be new, even if you're familiar with Scarborough's rope. There's another model called the writing rope, connected, um, connected to the reading rope, but different. This one was developed by Joan Sedita, And the writing rope, again, if you picture a rope with 5 different strands that have to do with being a skilled writer, because we know that reading and writing are reciprocal skills. In order to be a good reader, it really helps if you're a writer. And holy cow, in order to be a skilled writer, you have to be a skilled reader. And so that's where the reading rope and the writing rope and those different components really complement and build each other. So the writing rope has 5 different strands. One is critical thinking. And so, in terms of writing, critical thinking would be generating the ideas, gathering the information, the very act of the writing process, drafting, organizing, writing, revision. If you don't have critical thinking skills, you don't know where to revise. Syntax. Syntax is another strand. Syntax has to do with grammar, sentence fluency, interesting sentence structures, and punctuation. And the fact is, if you can notice those things as a reader, it's going to make you a better writer. I'm going to skip text structure for just a hot moment while I talk about the other two. Writing craft would be word choice, awareness of your task. Who are you writing it for? What are you writing it for? Why are you writing? That would be part of the writing craft strand. And as a reader, if you can notice interesting word choice, it builds your vocabulary. If you have enough exposures, you can really own that word choice, that vocabulary, and you can use it in your own speaking and writing. And then the last strand is transcription. And that has to do with spelling and whether you're handwriting or typing a passage. So now let's go to the text structure, which is that middle strand and the one that we're going to really focus on in this session. So text structure has to do with what is the text structure? Is it narrative, informational, or opinion? It has to do with the paragraph structure, how the author chooses to group the information. There's a lot of critical thinking in that. And if you can notice that as a reader, it also makes you a better writer. And if you can notice it as a reader, it can also help you understand the organization and synthesize it and understand it and comprehend it better. The patterns of organization deal with informational text, whether it is description, sequence, cause and effect, compare, contrast, problem solution. And I'm going to be honest, even as a literacy specialist, I wasn't aware of this for most of my teaching years. It wasn't until I started teaching content literacy that I really began to understand it. So if it's fairly new to you, that's understandable. But the more you know about it, the more you can guide your students and help them with that. And then the last part of that strand text structure is the linking and transition words. And I'm going to address that just a little bit later in the presentation. All right. Any questions or comments about the writing rope? All right. So we don't hear the term Common Core standards as much as we did 10 or 15 years ago, but it is still very much in play. No matter what state you're in, whether your state claims Common Core or wants nothing to do with it, I guarantee that your standards are built on the Common Core standards. So I want to take just a quick moment and go over those original Common Core standards. This doesn't break them down into grade level, but it's more of that overall at the elementary level. Common Core says that students should be able to read closely to determine what the text says explicitly and be able to make those logical inferences, which is part of that critical thinking. They should be able to cite specific textual evidence when writing or speaking to support conclusions. They should be able to determine central ideas or themes and summarize the key supporting details and ideas. We want our kids to be able to do that when they read. We also want them to be able to plan that when they're writing. We want to we want them to be able to analyze how and why individuals or events or ideas develop. That's part of that author's craft, but we can help kids understand that by looking at author's craft when we're reading. And under craft and structure, there's that word choice, why authors choose specific words. Is it technical or connotative or figurative meanings? Analyze specific word choices, because that gives you power to understand as a reader and power to communicate your thoughts as a writer. And we also want to be able to integrate knowledge and ideas. And so notice in under 7, 8, and 9 how it's that claim and supporting it with evidence and or finding it as a reader. So that's kind of an overview of the Common Core standards. I can't go to every state and pull out their standards, but I thought if there was one state, when I think of it, that doesn't want anything to do with the term Common Core, one of the top ones might be Florida. I'm not throwing any shame at anybody or any state, but we know that it became a pretty political phrase or idea. So here is Florida. These are the current second grade standards for informational text. And trust me, they have nothing to do with the idea of Common Core. And yet look at what is in the second grade standards in Florida. Ask and answer questions such as who, what, where, when, and why, and demonstrate understanding of key details in a text. Doesn't that sound familiar? Comes right from Common Core. Identify the main topic as well as the focus of specific paragraphs. So there's that, thinking about how authors group information and using that to help us comprehend it and or plan it as writers. And doesn't this sound familiar? Describe the connection between a series of events, ideas, concepts, or steps. And then under craft and structure, determine the meaning of words and phrases in a text. Know and use various text features such as captions, bold print, subheadings, glossaries, etc. And identify the main purpose of a text, including what the author wants to answer, explain, or describe. This is Florida. Whatever state you're in, I guarantee that your standards look somewhat similar to this. Not exact replications, but pretty close. Thoughts or ideas as you think about your own standards and how they relate to content literacy. And Amanda, I have lost my comment or my chat box.
Oh,
So
yeah. So no questions right now in the chat, and none in the Q&A either.
okay.
So yeah, you can just keep moving
Then
along.
let's keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an image of a TCI first grade text. The program is My Community, and it's from lesson 6, and it's the economics unit. So this particular page is what is a good. And the first thing that I want to point out is that TCI has something called considerate text, regardless of the program, grade level, content area, we use considerate text. What does that mean? For one thing, it means that even in older grades, you will find that the text is in one single column, and there is one, maybe two text features, such as illustrations, photographs, maps, graphs, whatever. So the page there's a lot of white space. It's not overwhelming. You don't get ADHD just looking at it. And whatever the text feature is, it's going to help the reader really comprehend the content of the text. I also want to point out the importance of subheadings. Most students, in my experience, they pay very little attention to the photographs or text features, and they really don't pay attention to the subtitles or headings. And so one of the things that you can do, whether you're teaching kindergarten whether you're teaching 6th grade, whether you're teaching 8th grade, doesn't matter, is be explicit in your instruction. Just take that quick minute to point out that the heading helps you understand what you're going to be reading about. This is 1st grade, so it's stated as a question. So you know exactly what you are supposed to get out of it as you are reading. And in this case, it starts out with what is a good. The second paragraph is organized in what you do to get a good. And the third paragraph is what they use for trade. And then I love this. It ends with what goods can you find in the picture? So there's just a little bit of inquiry. And students, even at 1st grade, can look at this photograph and they can name some of the goods that are in this picture. So just play along with me. Throw in the chat, what are some of the goods that you can see in this picture? Be creative. What would a 1st grader say?
So we've got clothes, crayons,
Yeah.
chairs, shirts,
I can see it
paper.
now. It popped, I think it popped up when someone had something to say. So
Oh,
I
good.
can see that now. So I want to say this, no matter what you teach, you don't have enough time in the day, right? I mean, that's just a fact. But I love the phrase work smarter, not harder. And so when you are doing social studies, instead of just getting through the content and can they answer the questions, putting the text up on the screen and taking a little bit of time, even in kindergarten and 1st grade, to point out this text, the text feature, the organization, the subheading, you are exposing students to those concepts and helping them build their reading muscles so that as they read more independently, they're able to start doing that on their own.
So Julie, can
Okay.
I pause you for a second? We have a question
Absolutely.
come up.
Yes.
Would you recommend that you go over all the text features first and then read the information for the content? Or read for content first and then do the text features? So I guess what would you start with?
I think you can do it either way. As you know your class, you could read the content and then kind of like looking at the picture of a puzzle, get the content, the big idea, and then show how the text is set up to help you comprehend it. Or you could guide students through how to use those text features to understand it better the first time. Either way works.
Okay, great.
That's a
Thank
great
you.
question.
Mhm.
All right. So I have a little gift for you. This is a document that I developed with a colleague of mine. And I would tell my students, you are going to use this so much in your reading and your writing that it is going to be your best friend. Now, that's when I was teaching middle school, but I have to tell you, if I were teaching 1st grade today, I would still use elements of it. I would use it in a different way. Maybe I would use it more to guide myself with my students. But this is the text structure best friend. Amanda has put a link to it. It is a gift to you from me. You can also click on the QR code. So let me just talk you through it a little bit. So it has the 6 types of text structure. And notice that it also has graphic organizers there. So I use those graphic organizers to help students pull out the important information when they were making notes. And I called it making notes, not taking notes, because the whole point is to personalize it and make it so that you can keep track of what's important. And these graphic organizers help students know what is the important information to pull out of a text. It also has the purpose of the text structure. And then finally, it has those signal words. And when I was showing you the rope, it mentioned signal and transition words. Well, here are some of them right here. This is not an exhaustive list. You can go online and Google signal and transition words and get all kinds of wonderful documents and examples that have way more examples. But for my students, this was a great place to start. So for instance, anytime you see the words but or although, those automatically mean that something is either changed or something is different. And so they are really compare contrast from what it was to what it is now. Um, Anytime you see the word first, whether it's an example or a step, that usually means that you're going to see more than one. Anytime you see therefore, that implies cause and effect. Something caused something else. And the more that students can be aware of these, we would highlight them. The more they can be aware of them in the reading, it helps them understand what they're reading better. And the more they become familiar with them, the more power they have to use them as writers. So even at kindergarten and first grade, you probably wouldn't hand them this document, but you could use it to help yourself remember, oh yeah, I want to look for signal and transition words. Again, the more kids are exposed to it, the more they are ready to notice, use, and own them themselves. Thoughts or questions? We're gonna play with this a little bit and apply it, but I want to pause here for any thoughts or questions.
So no new questions in the Q&A. And the chat's all good too, so.
All right, so let's keep going and apply it. This is a third grade example. And so this is from our community and beyond, lesson 15. And it's all about the unit on citizenship and civics. And so this particular section is on going to public meetings. And I've gone through and highlighted some of those signal and transition words. So notice that at third grade, TCI didn't make the heading into a question. So one of the things that you can help your students do, no matter what grade you're in, start out by looking at those headings and turn it into a question. So, and even if it's not the exact question, it at least helps them focus on what they're going to learn, and maybe they go back and tweak it later. Maybe you start out thinking, what is a public meeting, or what does it mean to go to a public meeting? And it turns out that it's more of a why go to a public meeting. Not a big deal. Nobody's going to die on the table, but just getting them used to turning those headings into questions can really help them focus on what is the author's purpose here and what is the important information in this section. So one way to have a voice in your community, that means that there's going to be more than one way, but this is one of the ways. Before making decisions. So that's more of a sequence. So leaders want to know what people think before they make decisions. Doesn't that make sense? And for instance is an example. So this isn't the only way that leaders are going to get to know what people think, but one instance is that they might call a meeting to talk about something. And I love this one at the bottom. If you choose to speak at a public meeting, then the leader of the meeting might ask you questions. When you see if and then, it's cause and effect. One thing makes something else happen. So in this case, whoa, hey, sorry about that. In this case, I would say that the point of this is kind of a what is a public meeting and why go to a public meeting. Notice that on this page in third grade, there are 2 images, but it's still not overwhelming. It's still that considerate text. Any thoughts or questions here? All right. Thanks, Nate.
Actually, Julia, a question just came in. For the third grade example, you said that you went through it to highlight those keywords first.
We're going to get to that because you're going to do that too. Yeah. Hold on, and we will get to it.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I want to show you one more example. This is a fourth grade text. And one of the things I want to show you is still consider it text. This is science, and it's all about energy being transferred and conserved. There's one image that really helps explain the content. And so in the chat, what would you turn that heading into? How would you turn it into a question for your students? Again, even if it's not exact, it can be adjusted later. How is energy transferred and conserved? Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of a logical one. But if you chose something else, not a big deal. The point is, oh, why is energy transferred and conserved? That's a good one too. The point is helping your students learn how to do that automatically. So when you approach a text and there are headings, drawing students' attention to that, looking at the text features before they start reading. And so you can see that I've highlighted some of the signal and transfer words in this one too. I'm going to keep going because we're getting just a little short on time. I'm going to keep going. So second section, some of the TCI components that support content. And this is the question that just came up. How did I highlight those signal words? So these are the images. I don't know if you noticed them at the top of the text, but you will see them regardless of the grade level, regardless of the content. You will see these little icons at the top of the page when you use the digital book, which you can pull up on your computer, on your screen, you can display it. So the first one is that it can be read to them. I personally felt like the point was to help kids understand the content, and then we can go back and make it more of a literacy lesson. So I never minded my students listening to it first. It wasn't going to hurt them. But you do have the ability to turn that on and off in your student subscriptions. The second one I love, it's main idea. So you can talk to your students. Remember, that's huge in your standards, no matter what state you're from. So you can talk to your students and highlight, what do you think are the main ideas? And then click that button and check it against the text. Such a great feature. And the third one is the one that I use. That's the highlighting tool. So we're going to play with that in just a moment and you'll see it. The fourth one is annotating, which I love. At this moment, you can't do it on your teacher subscription. It can only be done in the student subscription. I am hoping that TCI changes that. And then the last one is that you can actually take that text and you can download it. So that might be one way of getting around the annotating, is that you could still annotate it if you download it and make it your own. Okay, let's go live and look at an actual text. So this is first grade, but it's a different lesson than the one we were looking at earlier. This is called What Do Good Neighbors Do? And so I'm not going to get into the actual planning and the actual lesson because we are a little short on time, but I'm going to go right into the reading, right into the text, which you can get to here, or you can get to on the menu to the left, either way. TCI calls that positive redundancy. So you can get to the tools that you need when you need them. So here's the text. There are those icons. Okay. Just so you know, the introduction usually does not have a main idea. So I'm going to go right to the next section. Okay. Notice the key vocabulary is highlighted. And if we were to click on it, it would actually take you right to the definition. But let's take a look, and let's say we think that you and your neighbors live and work in a neighborhood. I think that's the main idea. I'm going to highlight it. Takes me right to the highlighting tool. And it's that easy. And then I could click it against the main ideas and find out I was partially right. I had half of it, but there are actually two main ideas, one in each paragraph. I'm going to go back to the session and we're going to look at another grade level, partially because first grade, the text is so simple, it is developmentally appropriate. So to be honest, there aren't as many signal words. So we're going to take a look at third grade. This is our community and beyond. We're going to go to the reading. There's the introduction, citizenship and participation. Notice that the text is a little more complex, but it still has that considerate text, single column, no question in the heading, but there's a subheading there with how do we have a voice in our community? So for this entire lesson, that's what students are trying to figure out. How do we have a voice in our community? I'm going to go to the next section. People choose our leaders. And let's just see, can you find some of those signal and transition words? Madonna, tell me more about what you're thinking. What is the difference between transfer and conserve? Oh, you're looking at that fourth grade lesson. You know what? I am so sorry. I flew right through that. You're interested in the content right now, aren't you? I don't think we're going to take time for that right now, but basically, when one object hits another, the energy is transferred, and the object that's then still the energy is conserved. There's still energy there, but it's not being used. Oh, got it. That was a guiding question. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, what are you what are you seeing in terms of uh, what are you seeing in terms of signal and transition words? And even before we do that, ooh, now, yep, right there. Um, I saw but right here. So what is that saying? You know, the United States has a government, but how does that government work? So that's a difference. Yes, there's a government. How does it work? Yes, Nate, you're absolutely right. How would you turn this heading into a question? How do people choose our leaders? And that's pretty much what it does. That's pretty much what this text addresses. Yeah, exactly. And that's what they're going to read about. So again, helping students notice the heading, turn it into a question, look at the pictures. What are people doing in these pictures? They are maybe organizing and volunteering for a candidate. And they are also keeping themselves updated on the news. And so those pictures help with that. And then at the end, of course, it talks about voting. I'm going to go back again. Because I want to take a few minutes and talk about the toolkits that support content literacy. If you look at this image, so here's that toolbox that's on the left. And regardless of your content area, regardless of your grade, there's going to be a little section under program that says support. And this is what it will look like. And so there isn't an entire toolbox around reading and English language development support. So let's go live and take a look at that. Whoops, sorry about that. I'm going to go back live again. And I'm going to go to support. this is one of those well-kept secrets. When you do a training for TCI, there's so much great information and so many supports that it's hard to get to everything. So I love being able to share this with you because, again, this is something that you can use no matter what your content area is that you're teaching. As an elementary teacher, I used many of these toolboxes across the content areas. I used it for everything. So notice there's a tab under support for that professional development that Brian was talking about earlier. And then there are skills and toolkits. So I'm going to click on that for now. But I would encourage you to go into support when you have a chance and take a look at what else is there. Okay, so this is fourth grade science, and it looks a little different. You know what I'm going to do? I am going to go back one. Sorry about that. But I want to show you the science one is fabulous, but I want to show you the one that's at third grade. So I'm going to go to support. Social studies has even more supports and toolkits. There's a social studies skills, but I'm going to go to the reading and ELD support. And this is what I wanted to show you. So for reading, there's K2, there's 3-5, and there's 6-12. They're not completely different. It's just that the K2 is a little more simplified, and there are more options available at 3-5, and then even more at 6-12. Notice there's also an English and Spanish version, but I'm going to start out. I'm going to look at the English version K2. Actually, I'm going to go to 3-5 because it would still include the same things. It would just have a little bit more there. So this is, what did I do? I clicked on the writing toolkit, which is fabulous. Notice that it has pre-writing, drafting, revising, proofreading, all of that good stuff. But what I actually want to do is do the 3-5 reading. Okay, so notice in the table of contents, there are pre-reading strategies during reading and after reading. There are all kinds of graphic organizers that you can use across the board. There are vocabulary supports. There's also a vocabulary toolkit, but some of that is in the reading toolkit. All right, and let's just take a look. I'm just going to start pre-reading. Here are some of the strategies that you can use. Chapter features scavenger hunt. Predict patterns of organization. So as students become more familiar with some of that text structure, you can get into some of it more. An anticipation guide. Here's some of the during reading, some of the strategies that you can use. Making connections. And of course, there are after reading, really doing that close reading and going back to make sure that there's comprehension of the content. And I love, love, love these graphic organizers. Cause and effect, I definitely used it with social studies. I definitely used it when I was teaching out of my ELA basal reader. I also sometimes used it for behavior. It wasn't punitive, but it was more reflective. When a student does something, what are the effects that it has? You be creative. You can use them in all kinds of ways. So again, I would encourage you to just go into those toolkits and explore so many great resources and things that you can use. So just in the reading toolkit, there's reading, writing, speaking and listening, and vocabulary. And some of the graphic organizers or strategies overlap a little bit, but you'll find something new in all of them. All right. So in closing, if we go back, what did you see today? that you might be able to use in your classroom? As you think about that first month of school, what do you want to dig into and use? The toolboxes, wonderful. Text structure bit is an anchor chart. It would make a fabulous anchor chart. If it was up there and kids learn to refer to it all the time, that would be so helpful. Wonderful. The highlighting and main ID icons. Yeah. Again, love the content in TCI, but as a literacy specialist, oh my gosh, they've got the literacy down. Paula, that would be a great question to put into the Q&A, and we can't address it right this moment, but I guarantee that someone at TCI can get back to you and help you with that. I'm going to skip ahead for just a moment because in just a few minutes, you're going to have a chance to choose a session for the third period. Lots of great options. I am doing the visual discovery strategy, the one there at the bottom, and it will take what we've done in this session and it will really do a deep dive into that strategy of visual discovery. But again, as a literacy specialist, I always connect it to the literacy and comprehension. I've so enjoyed the time with you. Amanda, anything else that you're thinking of to wrap things up?
So we don't have any open questions in the Q&A. Yeah, so I'll hang out here for a bit if anyone has any last minute questions for this session, and let Julie head over to session 3. But if you leave this webinar, just go back to the lobby to find your next period that you'd
Thank
like
you,
to join.
everyone.